So in beginning our discussion of lesson 2 for numeracy, which is going to talk about opposites and absolute value, we actually have to get a little bit of business out of the way here. And it's with regards to the confusion over this symbol right here, okay? That symbol can wreak havoc on even the best of us. So we have seen that symbol oftentimes just as a subtraction sign. Okay, so we've seen it as a subtraction sign. And as an example, we might see something like 5 minus 3. And if I were to say that, it would be 5, minus, otherwise known as subtract, 3. And we know that there's an operation. We have to take 3 away from 5. The other way that we probably know it as is by way of a negative sign. So as an example, something like negative 7. And we read that as negative 7, of course. Okay, and if we think about that number on the number line, in continuing with our discussion from yesterday with classifying numbers, we know that's to the left of the number line, and it is an integer, which it's also a whole number, but it's an integer definitely by way of it being, I'm sorry, it's not a whole number because it's negative, but it is an integer for that very reason, okay? The last way I want us to think about it is as the is an oppositizer, okay? So I know that's it seems like a weird word because it is, it's my own word. It's an oppositizer, okay? And I'll give you an example. If I start with this number, negative 15, but then I put another negative sign in front of it, what I'm really asking you to do is take the opposite. Take the opposite. I'm glitching here. Take the opposite of negative 15. And we should know that the opposite of negative 15 is just going to be positive 15, okay? So this is really the key to today's lesson. That's really the key to today's lesson. So I want us to get used to it, meaning take the opposite. And as long as we're not viewing it as an operation sign, and what I mean by that is as long as we're not seeing it between two numbers, which means it has to be the operation of subtraction, then we will never be wrong in thinking of it as take the opposite. So going back to it being a negative sign, I could think of this as the number 7 and take the opposite of 7, and that's negative 7. Okay, so it actually makes things a little bit simpler for us as we begin to change our mindset. So some examples, this is nothing more than, take the opposite. If I really thought about it, take the opposite of 8. And we know that's going to equal negative 8, which is what it says already. This says take the opposite of negative 5. But if we start at negative 5 and we take the opposite, that's going to get us to positive 5. So two negatives cancel each other out and become positive. You've learned that before, okay? So when we think about opposites, it's really important for us to understand that they are the same distance from 0 on a number line. So here's a number line, and let's just work with the value of negative 5. Here's negative 5 here. There's 0, of course, in the middle, and negative 5 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces away. to the left, of course, and the opposite of -5 is going to be the same number of spaces, but in the other direction. 5 spaces, in this case, to the right. So opposites just are naturally the same distance away from 0. One of those numbers being to the right of 0, one of those numbers being to the left of 0. The number to the right, of course, is positive. The number to the left is negative. Okay, so this gets us into our discussion on actually measuring a number's distance from 0. Measuring the distance of a number from 0, we say we are finding its absolute value. Okay, so to find the absolute value of a number means to find its distance. And it's represented by these two bars with some value in the middle. And that value, that x means any number. Okay, so I can replace x with 7, and I'd be asking to find the absolute value of 7. I could replace x with -15. Now I'd be finding the absolute value of -15. In either case, I'm just simply measuring how far that number is from 0. So if I want to take the written phrase, the absolute value of 6, I'm going to put those two bars, I'm going to put 6 in the middle. Okay, so that says mathematically find the absolute value of 6. And it's important to understand that because we're measuring distance. Distance is always a positive value. So it's important to understand that the absolute value is always a positive result. So maybe I should change that to green, okay? I think green being positive. All right, so don't overthink this. Whatever is in the bars, we positize it, okay? And it comes out as a positive outcome because it's nothing more than the distance. So if I want to quickly write these expressions mathematically, the absolute value of 26, there's my absolute value bars of 26. The absolute value of -53, there's my absolute value bars of -53. So I'm just simply asking you to take the English, as I would say, and convert it to the Mathlish, okay? Use mathematical symbols to simplify the way that we write it, because this is not an English class, okay? The next thing we're going to do, so this said to write, just simply write it in as a mathematical expression. This says to actually find. So what I mean by that is basically solve. Okay? So what is the absolute value of 19? How far away is 19 from 0? And that's simply 19. Likewise, how far is -83 from 0? What is the absolute value of -83? Well, that would also be 83. Notice these are both positive outcomes. Okay, so again, just like last night's notes, I'm going to leave it to you to go through these two problems or these two expressions and try to figure out what their values are. Find the value, actually figure out what this is equal to. So you're going to have to take the two concepts of absolute value and that sign there and put it all together to come up with the correct outcome. And be prepared, probably when you come to class tomorrow to start, to have a quick discussion and for us to continue with our investigation of absolute value and opposites. We'll see you then.